Yeah, well, we would like to say a few thank yous. Thank you to the library, the Friends of the Library, the civic group We Love Ashland, WACA-TV, the panelists, and the audience in the room and at home. Okay. The Be the Change panelists of 2019 are the moderator, Thomas Waldstein, the Board of Selectmen, Yolanda Greaves, the Board of Assessors, David Rosenblum, and representative for the Finance Committee, Adam Albert.
As well as Board of the Library Trustees, Carolyn Bell, Board of Health, Ron Eskovitz, Planning Board, Joe Ruberton, and the School Committee, Lori Tosti. We'd like to thank Honorable Representative Lewis for coming, Democratic Committee Co-Chair Ms. Makita Keegan, and Republican Committee Chair Mr. John Featherston.
They will describe why this forum program is so important and that this discussion is for informational purposes about the office and to encourage citizen participation in their own communities.
Representative Jack Lewis will speak first.
Here. Oh, yeah. I can speak anywhere. Good evening. They invited me to come and take a minute and a half to inspire everyone here and at home to run for elected office and to share a little bit about why I ran. But first I want to thank you for this opportunity and thank you all for serving. And for folks at home, there's a lot of positions opening up and a lot of opportunities to get involved here in Ashland. For me, I'll be honest, before being elected, before running for office, I was a dad. I had had jobs, but my main responsibility was as a father. At the time, I had one kid. And I remember the transition in my brain from working in churches and delivering sermons and working with other people's kids, where it seemed for me okay and tangible enough to plant a seed today and hope tomorrow somebody waters it, and to talk sort of big picture about most issues. And then all of a sudden I was responsible for this semi-formed 4-year-old, and everything became a whole lot more urgent. And opportunity presented itself as I got to know my new child, got to know his classmates, and started connecting dots that my brain had never connected before. I had, of course, been involved in education conversations like that, but something about that tangible reality of being responsible for another human being inspired me to get a little bit more involved and to ask some more questions. And the reality is that before I was elected, I was a dad, and long after you all put me out to pasture, I'll still be a dad. And when I go to the State House or when I do anything in this position, it's probably the thing that's on my mind the most is what decisions am I making today and how will they affect my kid, his classmates, how they affect all kids today, and then by extension, all of their loved ones. And I'm having fun. So for those out there interested in running at any level, I hope you know that I'm always happy to talk to you and connect you to resources if it's something at the local level or state level, if it's getting involved in a campaign, if it's interning. We have about 10 interns every summer, and some high school students end the summer never wanting anything to do with government or politics again, but most of them end the summer texting me saying, Jack, how can I stay involved in some way? So there's opportunities at any age. Thank you again.
Now the Ashland Democratic Town Committee Co-Chair Ms. Makita Keegan will say a few words.
Hi, I'm Makita Keegan. I just want to thank We Love Ashland, Friends of the Library, and all the panelists tonight for this incredible event, trying to get folks engaged in the community. Like I said, I'm the co-chair of the Democratic Town Committee in town. My other co-chair is actually on the panel tonight, David Rosenblum. Very quickly, we are involved in town in so many different ways. What we primarily do is support Democratic candidates at the state and national level. We also have individual members who support candidates locally. But it's not just about getting folks elected. That's not why I'm involved. And that's not all that the Democratic Town Committee does. We work together with other folks in town to make sure that all of our values are represented and that Ashland is a wonderful, welcoming community for all. We do things like make sure at our meetings that we collect for the food pantry. We have also participated in the wonderful Green Up Ashland event and civic events like that. And despite what a lot of people think, and my colleague from the Republican Town Committee here, I hope, can attest to this as well, we reach across the aisle and work with each other on important issues in town as well. One particular incident comes to mind when we stood together as a town, Republicans, Democrats, town officials, citizens, after the events in Charlottesville, to say and to definitively say that our community is an open, welcoming, and loving community. And that's why I'm involved, and that's why I encourage everyone to get involved. Running for office might seem really intimidating and really tough, but I got to tell you something. It's one of the best ways to really invest in your community and really be part of the community. So don't be shy, jump in with both feet, and thank you very much for your time.
And next we'll have the Ashland Republican Town Committee Chair, and he will say a few words as well.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. This is a wonderful event. I want to self-identify. I am a public service nerd, and I'm very proud of it. On many different levels, there's nothing I haven't done on a local level. I come from the Midwest originally. I was a Future Farmers of America member, and it's probably shocking to most people. I've been an intern to Mayor Jerry Springer. Think about that for a minute and let that roll around here. I was an intern to Mayor Jimmy Buffett. And I've been a selectman, I've been on Board of Health, I've done almost school committee in North Carolina, I've done almost everything. And the reason I bring it up is because of a guy like me, a shy little kid, can grow into to be, a radio and TV show host who talks about politics. But the reason I think it's important to identify all of that is, even though I am the chairman of the Republican Town Committee, I never made a decision in any of my political roles as a Republican. I made it as a friend, I made it as a neighbor, I made it as a person who has, I know your kid in school. That's the way I always did it, and that's the way I've always been proud of it. And if you want to run for public office, we're going to help you. I will help a Democrat get elected, I will help a Libertarian get elected, I'll help a Republican get elected, because that's my job as chairman of the Republican Town Committee. But the one thing I want to tell you is the most rewarding thing, other than winning your election, is the day that you make a difference in somebody's lives. And that's what you can do by doing this. So I encourage you, any way that we can help you, we're here to help you, and best of luck to everybody.
Well, we'll like to take this time to remind the panelists and audience of the format of the panel.
Each question is rotated among the panelists with respect to response in order. Each panelist responds for up to 60 seconds.
There is an opportunity for 30-second additional comments following completion of the responses, and panelists should adhere to the timekeeper's warning and signal to stop. Thank you for your cooperation in advance. We must keep this event on time and allow for as many questions as possible from the public. Please do not look away from the timekeeper's warnings, as the moderators will ask you to stop.
After the panelists will have the audience speak, and audience should keep in mind that the purpose of this forum is that we can learn about boards and committees and to practice civil democratic discussion. Questions must be related to the purpose of the board or committee and not specific actions ruling committee in the past or ongoing issues. This forum is for panelists to let us know about each committee and how it works and how it interacts with other boards and committees.
A WACA microphone will be set up to facilitate cable coverage, and please be remembered to use it. We've allotted 30 seconds per question, and the question and answer session will be governed by the following rules. This year's questionnaires cannot ask multiple questions or multi-part questions, and we do not have this time, unfortunately.
Follow-up questions from the audience member will be noted and acted on as time allows, and others in the line at the microphone have had their opportunity to present their question.
A follow-up question will relate to the subject matter of the main question and relate to one or more statements of the panelists. The moderator will have the discretion to allow for an immediate 30-second response from each panelist if the moderator deems the follow-up question compelling.
Other follow-up questions will be considered as a separate question for which the questioner must queue up again to ask, time permitting. The purpose of this forum is so that we can learn about these boards and committees and to practice civil discussion.
So right now we'll go over the schedule overview. So from 7:10 to 7:25, these are opening statements made by each panelist describing their board or their committee.
We will then take questions from us.
8:10 to 9, questions from the public.
And then 9 to 9:15, we'll have closing statements, and then at 9:15, we'll have thank yous.
I guess we'll move on to
Opening statements. from
panelists.
panelists.
Yes.
We will start with Thomas Waldstein.
Okay, thank you very much. My name's Tom Waldstein, and I'm the retired moderator of the town of Ashland. I served for 21 years from, I think about 1989 through 2010. Seems a while ago to me. So the job of the moderator is to control and manage and facilitate the town meeting. We have an open town meeting. Every voter is permitted to come, to speak, and to vote. The town meeting is managed by a widely understood set of rules with some variations. And the moderator has a second important function. By statute, the moderator appoints the members of the Finance Committee. So this is a less understood but very powerful power by the moderator. And I would say that but the most important thing that we do is we manage the town meeting. We manage it in a way that people understand. We manage it in a way that people can accept the decisions of the town meeting. And at least in my view, we managed it in a way in which allowed people to debate, even if it was messy and inefficient, so that when we ended up with a vote, whether we won or we lost, everyone could accept the vote. Okay, thank you.
Now a few words from Yolanda Greaves, representing the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm Yolanda Greaves. I'm in my third term on the Board of Selectmen. I've also spent 2 terms on our school committee a while back. The Board of Selectmen, their main goal is policy and procedure setting. We hire the town manager and the town council. We also approve the articles that go on town meeting. We work with the town manager to follow the charter to set the dates for town meeting, as well as for elections locally. We also have other things that you think you don't really realize until you're sitting there. We do dangerous dog hearings. I remember sitting and having my first one. We also approve liquor licenses for new restaurants, as well as every year we have to review and approve the renewal of almost every business license here in town. If you've ever watched one of our December meetings, we have a long list of things that we read through and approve and renew. As selectmen, we work closely with town manager. We hire the town manager. We also hire town council. And we've, in the last few years, put in a review process for our town council. We also, as members of the selectmen, many of us are on different subcommittees. One of us, Joe Mignani, is on our police building subcommittee. He's working with that, the public safety building. I'm currently on the Mendez feasibility committee. Some of them are on affordable housing. We've been on comprehensive plan. So as selectmen, you have your meeting, but then you could also be on other subcommittees.
Next, we'll have David Rosenblum from Board of Assessors.
Hi, David Rosenblum. The town has an assessing department, which basically does 99.5% of the work, maybe 99.9%, and that's Rich Ball and June and Terry, and they do say that they do most of the work. Oh, okay, thank you. Your tax, well, various departments are involved in getting your tax bills and setting the rate and so on. The job of the assessors is to fairly spread the obligation, the money amongst all the properties in the town, including commercial property, personal property, and of course everybody's home and so on. And the board is, there are 3 assessors. There's an opening right now, but there are 3 assessors. They're elected, and we have meetings. Not that they're not that often, probably once a month, and we actually approve. We vote on exemptions and abatements that are generally prepared by the town's assessor, Rich Paul. And we get along pretty well, and we don't have unanimous votes at certain times, but we do generally agree, and I'm running out of time. Thanks. Okay.
Now, Adam Elbert from the Finance Committee.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name's Adam Elbert. I'm the chair of the Finance Committee. I've been on the committee for the past 5 years, the last 2 as the chair. As Tom mentioned, we are appointed by the moderator to 3-year terms. We really have 3 roles. We're the authorizing body for the reserve fund. So that's typically for expenditures that were unforeseen. Very often it's to make up the shortfall that we have in snow and ice. So when we have an awesome snow year like we did up until recently, there was lots of money in there. Now, not so much. In addition, we review all the warrants that go into the warrant articles for town meeting, as well as holding public hearings on those warrant articles so that people can come and hear the different departments present about those warrant articles, in particular what the financial components are, ask questions, and really suss out the different details so that everyone can understand in a transparent manner, why are we being asked to spend this money, what's it going to be used for, what are the long-term and short-term impacts, so that we can have a good evaluation and go into town meeting and understand whether we want to vote for this or not. We work with all the different boards and committees, closely with the Board of Selectmen and the school committee, all the different municipal departments, as well as the different pieces of the schools, so that we can look at the different budgets, including both the Ashland district as well as the Keefe Tech School, which takes a number of students from a vocational perspective into the Framingham campus. And last but not least, we have 7 members who work really well together. One of the things I really like about our committee is that it's okay to have a heated discussion, but at the end we vote and we move on and everybody walks out the door smiling and happy, and that is the best part about being on one of these committees, where everybody's really committed to doing the right thing and there's no ill will whatsoever. Thanks.
Next, we'll have Carolyn Bell from the Board of Library Trustees.
I originally ran for the library Board of Trustees in maybe 1995 or something. My goal was, at the time, to get computers into the library because I thought the kids in school who didn't have computers were at a disadvantage. And so that was my have or have not kind of position. And then what happened was, your role really is to support the policy, support the director. But in the time I've been doing this, what happened was I had a student teacher. I taught in the high school. And he was an older gentleman who was getting his Master's of Fun and came in to be my student teacher. And after that, I ran for the board. And then I contacted him because he was a prime mover in the building of the new Milford Library. And I called him up and said, how'd you do that? I want that. And he told me who to contact at the Board of Library Commissioners, and she came out. We got hold of an architect. I was able to say things like, I want a cafe. I want wide window seats for people to talk. I want benches. I want people to come in and chat. I don't want a librarian who says shush. And I got a chance to choose the librarian, and she is superb. And she is the face of the library. She doesn't hide in her office like some other directors, you know, when you go to other libraries. And over the years, so I was on the building committee, and then Diane Ring and I started the film program, and I've been showing films every Friday night for 14 years. And let's see, I've got the magazine exchange going, and you can just have a say in what happens around you, and that's why it's fun to do this. And please don't run against me.
I can't possibly follow that. Hi, how are you, everybody? Ron Eskovitz. I'm a first-term member on the Board of Health. It's been a very educational experience for me. First of all, you know, obviously the mission statement of the Board of Health is to protect the health and welfare of the residents of Ashland, I don't believe any visitors, and that's really what we try to do. There's a whole chapter in Mass General Laws, Chapter 111, and everything you can possibly imagine that could affect your health negatively or that we should regulate is probably in there. We also do have the ability and power to actually change laws, at least for our community, if we feel that something needs to be addressed. We're a 5-member panel. We typically meet twice per month, more if we need to. I think we have a great working relationship. Everybody's respected on the board. Everybody gets a chance to voice their opinion. We have a great health department. Mark Oram and Laura Clifford, you know, basically run the health department in town. We obviously work very closely with them. They are at all our meetings. They basically pretty much, you know, make sure that the meetings, you know, go off. The health agent keeps us abreast of everything that we need to be aware of as a board, whether or not there's an incident with a restaurant that may have failed compliance on a check, whether or not there are stores that might be unfortunately selling tobacco to underage people. And I'm out of time, but okay, thank you.
Next, we have Joe Ruberton from the Planning Board.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. So the Planning Board is a 5-member board. We meet the second and fourth Thursdays of every month in Town Hall, and we work closely with the town planner who works in Town Hall on a full-time basis. And so we interact with residents and developers here in town, business people as well, who are looking to develop or improve or alter a piece of property. We review those development plans and predominantly look to see that they're complying with the town zoning and bylaws. We consider amendments or changes to zoning here in town of our zoning laws. And if there's any need, we responsible to establish any zoning for any new issues that arise. We also approve, tree cuts on historical scenic roads. Those all have to come before the planning board. So, I think that gives you a sense of it.
And now we have Lori Tosti from the school committee.
Thank you. I'm Lori Tosti. I am the current chair of the school committee. This is my 3rd term, halfway through the 3rd term, so year 8. 6th year as chair. We're a committee of 5 people, and like I was happy to hear further down the table here, we have a group of people that have a lot of mutual respect for each other, as well as with the administrators that we're working with, and we put students first, and it's just even easier to disagree under those circumstances because we know that everybody's coming from the same place. We have 3 powers or 3 responsibilities. Superintendent, which includes hiring, firing, and evaluating the superintendent. We work with the budget, which is every aspect of the budget, and that also includes negotiating with the teachers. And then policy is the last one. What we don't do, and I think which sometimes confuses people, is we don't get involved with the day-to-day administration in the buildings. Sometimes we might get questions about, can you change this teacher, or can you fire that person, or athletics or whatever, the answer is no. We don't deal with the administration. We hire people to do that, and then we evaluate those people. So that's essentially what we do.
Okay, so next we have some questions that everyone on the panel will be able to answer. We'll go one by one. Not all questions can be answered by all panelists, and if that's the case, you can just yield your time and can move on to the next person. Our first question is, what made you decide to run in the first place? Yep.
Shall I start?
Yep.
So when I first moved to town, I fell under the spell of Isabel Harrison, a really remarkable woman, and got involved in public service as a result of Isabel. And then 15 years later, Doris Overturf, who was a beloved moderator, decided to retire and spoke to me about running for the job. And by that time, I'd been in town for quite a while, and I decided to do it. And I actually had an opponent that year, which was disconcerting. But I managed to eke out a landslide as I remember it. And did it for the next 21 years.
So I've run for office 6 times. I've won 5 of those. The one that I lost was to Jack Lewis. And the reason I ran the first time was I had an issue with one of my children in school in that they were going to change the kindergarten date. So I found myself going to a school committee meeting. And I went to that school committee meeting, and then I got to know members of the school committee, and some of them were getting ready to step down, and they said, "You seem really interested. You should run for school committee." I ran uncontested the first time. I actually filled the term for Karen Spilka, who had just won the seat for state rep. I did a 2-year term, and my girls were both in the school. I said, I feel like I'm helping out, and no one else had stepped up to run. So I ran again. Then after that, I stepped down from school committee for 5 years, and a lot of things were going on in town, and I had people who knew me as a school committee member who said, "You would do a really good job on the Board of Selectmen." So 7 years ago, I ran for Board of Selectmen. Back in May, I was just reelected to my 3rd term.
Okay. I'm a first-term assessor, and I did run unopposed, so that was, so I won. All right. And hope to, and how did I get there, I guess is the question. And naturally, as you've been told, I am currently co-chair of the Ashland Democratic Town Committee. And frankly, I wouldn't even thought of it if not for the committee. And it's just being, with other people who actually do have elected offices, are serving elected offices, and just talking about the town and being involved about it. And I don't think I would have even known that there was a need for an assessor, someone to be assessor, and then, "Come on, David, why don't you do it?" And actually, believe it or not, I'm interested in this in a strange way. It's obscure and technical, and but I do like it. I work with computers and the Registry of Deeds, and the Registry of Deeds feeds the deeds to the town that knows who owns the property, and I could go on and on, but that got me into it, and here I am. Thanks.
So we kind of have a rule in my house, you don't get to complain about something if you're not willing to do anything to fix it. Similar to Yolanda, had some issues in the schools and decided it was time to get involved. I had ran for school committee and did not win the first time. I then ended up running for Board of Health, won, and shortly thereafter transitioned over to the Finance Committee. It's been a really rewarding experience. I don't have to run for election for that committee because it's appointed by the moderator, but if anybody's ever come to one of our budget meetings and heard some of the questions that get asked, I think you'd agree that there's no difference between elected and appointed in that committee. Everybody really works very hard to try and get involved, make a difference, help make sure that the town's being fiscally responsible and that we're going in the right direction. So I really love it.
I originally ran because I was invited to by the woman who was holding the Friends together. I think there were 10 people maybe who belonged to the Friends at the time. And the library was really a dump. People drove by on their way to Framingham. And a lot of people couldn't understand why we wanted a library at all in our town. And then it was a toss-up, because I taught in the high school, of how many parents whose kids I failed were going to vote against me, or how many maybe liked me and maybe I'd get a few votes. So that was kind of a very nerve-wracking thing. I think Joe Magnani, who was my student, voted for me. But the thing about it is, any position in town, if you really care about it, in my case, I think the two institutions that are so important in this country are public education and the public library. I think it's a great equalizer, really. And so I think if you get involved in it, you can do things. Now, Lorne Bullywell, for instance, is head of chair of trustees right now. He spent a year contacting all kinds of people, letters, being a nuisance, he said. And he got us the lights that are out in front of the library. You push the button and the light blinks and maybe nobody will run you down. And, you know, Carol Ambach, she's working on, she's the face of the book sale. She's collecting the money and encouraging people. And so we've all worked the book sale. You can come in and just do nothing. I mean, you can nod and then leave. But you can do a lot if you choose what's important to you and work hard at it.
Now too. This is my first term on the Board of Health. Just from a personal standpoint, I'm a podiatrist, so it was a little bit of a progression, but I kind of got here in a little bit of a roundabout way. Maybe a little bit self-serving in the beginning, but I think you know, as it turns out, you know, you really do want to try to give back. I've been a resident since 1999, or really 1997. So I'd been in the community for a while. I was bombarded with a couple of notices being in a butter to a development that was going up. There were a couple of board meetings for the Conservation Committee and a few other boards, and I kind of wanted to find out what was going on behind my house. And went to a few meetings, did a site walk with some of the members of the Conservation Committee. And they said, hey, you know, we could use a little bit of help on the Board of Health. What do you think? And that's kind of how I got started. And it's been a great experience. I think I've learned more from people than I've given back, but it's a learning experience, and it's been a great experience for me. And the town has a lot of great people in it, and I'm proud to be associated with everybody.
Okay, so I moved to town in 2010, and I was pretty close friends with somebody who had served on the planning board back in 2010 to 2015 timeframe. And so for a few years, I kind of heard stories and learned about what went on and some of the decisions that that the planning board made. And I finally had a point from a career perspective where I had a little bit more time to do something else with, and so I filled a vacated seat on the board for about a year, and then I ran for election in 2017 and got a 5-year term, and it's been great. It's been I met a lot of people in town and know what's going on, and I feel as if can have some influence over the shape of our community going forward.
So my entry into this was kind of just a personal evolution. I had been home with 4 kids for a lot of years and focusing mostly on that, working part-time. My husband was busy building his career, and I say that I was finally ready to come up for air at some point. And when that happened, I started joining I was asked to join a couple different committees and boards in town, just within the schools. And then through that, people would say, oh, would you ever be interested in this or that? And all of a sudden, somebody mentioned school committee, and I thought, oh, I could do that. I have a legal background. I have 4 kids. They've been in all the schools. Like, why not? No big deal. But then I found myself in a campaign and an election with an opponent. And I hadn't really completely thought it through, to be honest, but I did find that it was a really valuable experience going through that, an opportunity to think about how I was going to handle myself through that process and what I believed about what should happen in the schools. And here I am, 8 years later. So.
Okay. Well, our next question for the panelists is, what did you do to campaign? And please keep in mind to keep an eye out for the timekeeper. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that first time was the only time I had an opponent. So what I did to campaign back then was I did order signs, and I did ask friends and neighbors and contacts of friends and neighbors if they would be willing to put my sign out. I had a couple of friends that would host gatherings so I could meet some people that I didn't already know and talk a little bit about what I thought I could offer to the schools. And then on election day, I had my posse out there with the signs. So that's really about all that I did.
So I also ran unopposed in the election. So I obviously I got the signatures necessary to run, and that was good. Met a lot of people and tried to talk to people as part of that process and get their opinion on different things. And then I also participated in a candidate forum here in the library, which was a cool experience. And that was the bulk of my campaigning. So.
I think mine pretty much mirrors the other 2 candidates. There was a forum here where some of the people everybody could ask questions, and we could give a little bit of information about ourselves, a lot of personal statements, and maybe a little bit about the board that you were going to be working on, maybe a perspective question or 2, so that was interesting. You do need to get at least 50 signatures to be able to run, so that's another opportunity to campaign. I was lucky enough to have a couple of members help me out, and I was also able to do an interview on the local cable access TV as well, which was also very beneficial.
Well, as I say, when I ran with Kate Correa, the 2 of us, she was unhappy about something at the library, and me, I just wanted the computers, and so we put our names on the sign, and it turned out we knew a lot of people around town, so we got a lot of lawns. That was good, and we split the cost, and then we kind of got going, and it kind of got bigger and bigger. And what happened was, until the library really got going, there wasn't a whole lot of interest. In fact, I want to tell you that when we started building the library, the children's room downstairs was under racks of books, and they discovered that there was a lot of termite damage. And at some point, that top part was going to fall into the bottom part. And so we got really lucky. Our timing was perfect. But as for running, at the time, it wasn't highly competitive. It might be after tonight, but
So, as I mentioned before, Finance Committee members are appointed by the town moderator, so there is no campaigning or an election. All you have to do is go to Town Hall, fill out the talent bank form that indicates that you're interested in serving on the committee, and then the next time an opening occurs, either because somebody either steps down from position, maybe moved out of town, or if they decide that they're just not going to maintain the position after their 3 years is up, the moderator will go and look at the names in the talent bank, look at their forms, and decide who they want to interview, at which point, if you're selected, you're then appointed to the committee.
Okay, as I said, I ran unopposed. I did not spend any money campaigning. Glad people are mentioning the signatures, only that it's something to do, but it's not hard. It really doesn't take you that much time, an hour or two in front of the post office or Market Basket or Honeydew Saturday Morning, I recommend. We'll get you the signatures. And the forum was it was a lot of fun, actually, just to be at the forum and talk about what we intend to do. And though I should mention, in campaigning, I did campaign with Chuck Lids, who was running for assessors, and opposed, and worked with him. Chuck did not win that time. By the way, I have to mention Chuck did take out papers for this time, and I think hopefully he'll win this time.
So the first 2 times I ran for school committee, it was unopposed, but because I didn't know a lot of people in town, because even though I've been in town since 1990, I'm still considered a carpetbagger because I wasn't born and raised here. So I did signs just to get name recognition. When I ran for Board of Selectmen, I knew a few more people. People remembered me from the work I had done as a school committee member. But that was my most contested race. There were 5 of us running for 2 seats, and then there was also 2 people running for a 1-year term. And in that election, I really got out and talked to people and talked about what my concerns and let them know why I was running. And I think it's important, if you decide to run, that you might lose, and that's okay, because it's important that we have the debate and we have the discussion, because without that, if we have too many uncontested races here in town, you just keep getting the same thing. And it's important that there's disagreement, but disagreement that can be discussed, because that's how we get better as a town.
So as I mentioned, the very first year that I ran, I had an opponent. So I forced my law partners to contribute to me. And I sent out a mailing in the town. After that first year, I didn't have an opponent, and the moderator runs in 1-year terms. So I had to run 21 1-year terms. So I didn't have an opponent for about 15 years. I did have an opponent later on, and I stood on my record, such as it was. And as far as getting papers signed, it was great while the kids were in school. I brought them to the basketball game or some school event. The papers went around. It was all done. After the kids grew up, it became a little more of an issue, but somehow I had a friend or 2 who would do it for me. And that's what happened.
All right. Our next question is, did you ever lose an election? If yes, how did you bounce back? And if you didn't, do you think more competition would have made a better experience, or would have it brought the most out of you? And we can start back with Lauren at the end.
I have not lost an election yet, mostly because 2 of them were unopposed. I do think, however, I mean, as much as it's nice to go through that experience without some of the stress that comes along with the campaigning and whatnot, I think it is important that we have a number of people stepping up for these positions for a number of reasons. I mean, I think it keeps even the people who are there already on their toes, learning new things, being able to express what they believe in. It gives other people in the community an opportunity to understand that they can be part of this as well. And I just think it's really important to the system as a whole that we have, every race should be contested all the time, I think, as much as I personally enjoyed when it wasn't.
Yep. So I have not lost a race, but I ran unopposed 1 time. So I would just echo the prior statements that I think choice is good in our democracy, and the more people involved, the more perspectives that are present. So.
So I'm 1-1. I lost to our current chair and appointed, I guess, political nerd, who's been, as he said, a jack of all trades and, on a lot of different committees. And that was the first one was a good experience. The second one was pretty much, I think there were just 2 positions and 2 of us running, so it was pretty much that I was going to get in. But I agree with everybody else's sentiments. It's important for everybody to try to get involved, even though maybe I didn't, get involved initially because I was planning on doing this. Yeah, I think it's a great thing to be able to give back to a community that you love. And if we all care about the community, it's better for all of us. It's a better place to live.
I don't want to lose. I would be crushed. My husband would have a very hard time with me. Yeah, it would be very bad. But on the other hand, I believe in the power of the invitation. You want somebody to run. That's how I started. Somebody said, you should run. And then somebody else, I remember my husband's sister spoke to me all upset about something at the library, had to do with a sign of someone she knew. He had died, and we had the plaque, and we weren't taking care of the plaque. And I looked at her and said, you really should run. There's an opening right now. And she said, me? How can I do that? Well, so I told her how to do that, and she ran. And she was amazing, it turned out. She had been in commercial real estate. She had been in commercial real estate in Boston when we were moving for the building. She knew how to do things about per square foot and price, and she was wonderful. And I think along the way, I've invited various people to do various things, and they've been happy to rise to the occasion. I think the power of an invitation is what you need.
So I'm an electrical engineer by trade, and I will tell you that throughout a 30-year career, I learned way more by failure than I do by success, okay? So I don't think there's anything wrong with running for an elected position and losing, and it sure as hell doesn't stop you from raising your voice and participating and having an impact just because you're not on that board or committee, okay? So I would highly encourage you, regardless of whether you win or lose, to stay involved and continue to contribute, because you're still a voice in this town and you still have the opportunity to make a difference.
This is my only election unopposed, so I happen to be 1-0 at this point. And but actually, what Carolyn said was very, I appreciate it. Invited. I ran because someone asked me to. And I could have said no, but I thought about it, and I said, sure, I'll do this. This is really good. So I think that was a very important point. Thanks.
So I would echo what Adam said, that in losing, you gain a lot as a person. I know I grew as a person just doing the whole campaign. State level run is certainly different than a local run. I think Jack and I both walked off a lot of shoes. But the important thing that I found was I learned and I met a lot of people, and it made me realize that in Ashland we have a really great community, and we need people to step up. We need people to say, I don't know that I agree with you. I don't know that you're gonna represent me the way I wanna be represented, so I'm gonna run. And I think we need to encourage each other to do that, because civil debate and discussion is what's going to make our community better. And if we have too many uncontested races, we're going to have the same thing over and over again. And as Adam said, if you complain about something, step up, run, have your voice be heard, and even if you don't win, keep getting involved, because you know what? The next time you might. Or there might be something that you'll be better suited for, or that you'll be able to find your voice for and actually get on that committee.
So as I mentioned, I was unopposed 19 out of 21 years. And that was fine by me.
Well, our next question is sort of reflective of perhaps some thoughts of people who might want to run for local office. If I don't know that many people, will I have a hard time running for an elected position? Oh, and we'll start from Thomas Waldstein and going down.
So certainly it depends upon the position. There are positions of great responsibility and great time commitment. If you want to be a member of the Board of Selectmen or the member of the school committee, you have to be really determined and willing to put in the effort, and the responsibility is commensurate. So you have to get out there and you have to prove your worth to the citizens of the town, because that responsibility is so high. Others jobs like mine, which only took a few nights a year during town meeting, are a little bit different, and each reflects its own work.
I think that if you don't know a lot of people, a good way to start getting involved is look at all the boards and committees that we have here in town and that we as the Board of Selectmen have to appoint. There are always vacancies. We're always looking for new volunteers. We're always looking for people to step up and try something. And if you're not sure you're ready to run for office yet, join a committee. Get yourself out there. If you don't know a lot of people, join a committee. Show up at different events, volunteer, help out. We have so many great things that are going on in this community where you can get yourself known, where you can decide, okay, I'm going, and then when you decide to run for elected office, you get yourself out there and show up at meetings like this, show up at selectmen meetings, show up at school committee meetings, and show your interest. Because if you want to put yourself out there to run for office, you want people to know that you're committed. You know, being on a board or committee, you can determine somewhat how much time you spend. You can be spending your meetings plus a little, or you can be spending a lot. So if you don't know a lot of people, show up at things.
I don't think, I mean, a lot of people vote. I don't think you're going to know 400 people in town. Maybe some people do. So I don't, you know, in terms of your question, I don't think that's really that important. It's certainly helpful to have a bunch of people. If you campaign, it's probably essential, more than helpful, to have people working with you and to help you with the campaign. But other than that, and certainly what Yolanda said about you don't, there are a ton of boards and committees that aren't elected.
So to me, running for office is a great opportunity to both meet people and to learn from them, okay? If you're supposed to represent the will of the people, don't you need to talk to the people and find out what their will is? Well, that's a great chance for you to learn from them, understand what it is that are their big concerns, what are their issues, what do they want to see changed, if anything, and that gets your name out there at the same time. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody involved. And the more committees and boards that you sit in on, attend those meetings, get involved with, the more chance you have to learn what are the prevailing winds within town, what are people looking to accomplish. And that gives you an opportunity to decide, well, is this really something I want to do? And people are going to know who you are based on the opinions you express.
At the library, we have the Friends of the Library, which provides a lot of opportunity for people to join and then find an area that they like or want to suggest. For instance, you know, at the library, I spoke to Paula, and she said she's allowed me to give her a list of international murder mysteries because I like them. And she said, you kind of know more than I do about international murder mysteries. So, I mean, I can just give her a list and say, what do you think? Can we order these? And then I'm on the donor committee. I said, how would it be if I bought them for the library? And, well, my husband does the plants. Bonnie Mitchell's thinking about doing a weekend of children's literature. And so people work the book sale, either carting the books or just me. I'm always walking around suggesting books. Why don't you take this book? This is a great book. And it seems to me there are plenty of opportunities in the library community to contribute if you find your skill. Again, you find a need and you decide you can fill it.
So I don't necessarily know that you have to know a lot of people to run. I think a lot of the suggestions here are great. I think that, you know, that if you really want to do something, you'll get out there and find a way to do it. I'm sure that everybody operates that way. If you're really motivated to want to achieve something, you know, you'll find a way to do it. You know, I did have some help. I had some people that were already on the Board of Health, and they did help me. There weren't a lot of people opposing me, so it wasn't really all that difficult. I think one of the best things to do if you're interested in a specific committee, like other members have suggested, is go to those meetings. You know, it's very informational. It gets you known a little bit. Your face, you know, is seen. A lot of the committees have citizens participation where you can, you know, actually, you know, converse with some of the members and voice concerns. We have that at the beginning of every meeting of the Board of Health, and I think that really keeps us connected to town. And I think that's really the best way to go about doing things.
So I don't think you need to know a lot of people to run. I think running is the best way to meet a lot of people at the end of the day, if you do it right. I think you need to be okay talking to people and comfortable talking to people. I think more importantly than knowing people, it's knowing the issues of the town that you're in and that you want to participate in. I think that's the bigger challenge for somebody.
Yeah, and I think too, you might really be surprised by where support comes from. It's not always by the people that you directly know, or it might be from people that you directly know, but from another part of your life. I mean, I had an experience when I first announced that I was running way back. I went to high school in Framingham, and I wasn't soliciting or accepting campaign contributions, but two people who had held office in Framingham sent me checks, unsolicited, and then a third friend who had a like a PR type opportunity in Framingham offered to give me some help too. And not only they couldn't vote here in Ashland, but knowing that I had support early on and people that wanted to help me and believed in me, that had known me my whole life, just really helped me feel more confident about getting out and meeting new people around here. Word of mouth is a huge thing. People who care about what's going on here will be paying attention to where you stand, what you're saying, and how you're holding yourself. So it's not always about who you directly know.
Okay, so our next question is, what was it like after the first time you were elected? Was it hard to get up to speed with committee business, and do you have any suggestions on how to get up to speed? And we'll start with Thomas Wolstein again.
Okay, so this is an interesting question. So being the moderator is a little bit like being a judge. You're regulating procedure, and there are a certain set of rules. And so even though I was a lawyer and I'd sort of seen this and felt I was prepared, there is a learning curve for sure. And I would say it took me several meetings to become comfortable in the various issues that would come up from time to time at town meeting. After a while, I understood how I would handle them. They came up over and over again over the years. I had an attitude towards them, and it became second nature. But there was definitely a learning curve involved in that particular job as moderator.
So I think for both boards that when I first got on them, you have to be willing to listen, you have to be willing to ask questions, and you have to be willing to realize that you may have to do a lot of homework on certain issues and not so much on others. And you can take the experience from other things that you've done and apply it to what you're doing. So I know for myself, when I got on school committee, I understood what school committee did, but I didn't understand budgets. I didn't have any idea what Chapter 70 was, or I had just learned a little bit about it, circuit breaker, all the different funding things. When I then moved from school committees, took some time off, came to Board of Selectmen, I was able to take that experience as a school committee member and what funding meant and what the budget was as a selectman. But I then had to learn things like, what do you do with a dog license hearing? What do you do when you're reviewing liquor licenses? What does it mean to set the tax rate and to review and set the water and sewer rates? And in every situation, I was able to talk to those who had been on the board with experience. I was able to talk to our town manager and also the association that we're a part of. So be ready to ask questions and know that everyone who is sitting there is going to support you, because if the board works well together, it's going to work well.
Okay, the assessors is a very specific job and kind of technical. I don't know if any of the other boards have this, but there actually is online training. It's in the midst of announcement. It's about 20 hours, I think, once you're done. It's not an afternoon. It's more than an afternoon. It's kind of interesting. But to get started, you really, frankly, you don't have to know any of that. The town assessor, Rich Wall, basically we're deciding on abatements. People want their tax cut down, their values reduced, or exemptions. Seniors, there's various exemptions, so you get something off your the value of your house. And basically that information, those applications are presented to the board with a recommendation, and it's all in plain English, and we, then approve or disapprove those. But basically, generally approve them, or maybe a little, certainly some discussion about it. So frankly, it is pretty easy to get started, but I think I will find that as I get into it, I'll want to know more. I am wanting to know more, and it'll be more interesting. Thanks.
So I would say ask a lot of questions and rely on your board members that have been there before. There really are no dumb questions, because I guarantee you whatever you've asked that you think is stupid, somebody else asked before. I'll never forget saying, "Free cash? That's awesome. Where do we get free cash from?" Boy, did I get educated really fast on how that worked. Exactly. So believe me, that there are no dumb questions. Read a lot. There's tons of information about each of the boards and committees and how they work. Certainly at the state level, you can look and see what other towns and cities are doing to get some ideas. There are also meetings that are statewide, so there's statewide finance committee meetings where you can go and see what are going on in other cities and towns. I know the Board of Health has similar types of meetings, but stay active, keep getting as much information from every source that you can, and keep asking questions, and eventually you'll get there. I know every budget cycle I learn something new, so nobody knows everything.
Well, as an English teacher, I was always involved in discussions, keeping them going, giving people, making sure that people had a say. That was never my issue, but the part that surprised me was when I was doing the building here, I thought they'd think I was the little lady down, and they invited me to actually come in and go through the building as it went. And at one point, Malcolm Cheever was on the building committee with me, and they wanted, Paula and he and everybody wanted as many shelves as they could get. And I said, you have to have low shelves in the middle of the library because of the sight lines. We don't have a large staff. That's a weakness of ours. And we went back and forth, and Malcolm and Paula and I, and it was really difficult because it was a serious disagreement. But then the architect said, yes, sight lines are important. And then Malcolm said to me, I should know better than to disagree with a woman. And so it went very well, and he was just a sweetheart, Malcolm Cheever.
From a personal standpoint, I thought it was fairly difficult to kind of get up to speed after I was first elected. There are a lot of continuing things, probably on every board, where you kind of come in midstream and you really don't necessarily have a lot of experience with what's been going on in the board before, depending upon how many meetings that you may have attended. I really wasn't involved in government at all, so I didn't even really know the rules to follow at a meeting, the Robert's Rules of Orders, which we're all supposed to follow to respect, everybody. But, certainly there are minutes online for most of these committees and that you can refer to. And I agree with, other members saying that if you're going to rely on your fellow members to kind of bring you up to speed and help you through a lot of the learning curve that you'll have in the beginning. But it's all worth it, and you'll get acclimated just like everybody else does, because everybody's been there before as well.
Yeah, so there's definitely a learning curve in the first few meetings after joining the planning board. Just trying to understand what's going on and what you're talking about and what you're deciding, and keeping that frame of reference. It's hard at times in the beginning, but agreed. I think a decent understanding of Robert's rules will help you understand the structure and the flow of the meeting. And then for the planning board in particular, you know, the zoning laws and the bylaws of the town are really the basis for what we're doing. So trying to understand those as much as possible and know them as much as possible is definitely like a first starter if you're joining the planning board.
Yeah, as school committee as well, there's definitely a learning curve, and I think the key is just to understand that, be okay with it. The elections are staggered for a reason. There are senior members on the board that are there to guide you. Even beforehand, if you're considering a board and you're not sure, reach out to some members before you even pull your papers to see what kind of people you're dealing with, to see if there's going to be some mentorship there for you. I think it's important because I made a lot of phone calls in those first couple of years, and you know, I try to make myself available to anybody new who's coming on, and I think it's just like starting a new job, starting new parenting. Someone hands you a baby, you have no idea what, you know, any experience that you have not done before is going to come with its challenges, and hopefully you're working with a group of people that understands that and will be supportive.
Our next question is, how much time does committee/board work take up with meetings, extra work, and et cetera like that? What is the expected workload like? We can start from, I guess, Waldstein going down again. Sorry.
So as Yolanda mentioned, the work of the moderator begins after the Board of Selectmen approves a warrant, the list of articles that will be discussed. So it is incumbent upon the moderator to have familiarity with those articles in advance of the meeting in order to be prepared for the procedural questions that might be anticipated. And they do come up, especially in controversial issues. And I did spend a bit of time, sometimes with town council, scoping out what we anticipated would happen and what our appropriate response would be. So, because and those times would occur in the fall and in the spring, surrounding the 2 annual town meetings that we hold.
It's funny, I remember when I first ran for school committee and I asked some people who were sitting on the school committee about how long, you know, how much time do you spend as a school committee member? And they were like, well, you know, it depends on the week. If you have a meeting, it could be a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. And I'm like, okay. So I remember, you know, finally deciding to run, and I was on the school committee, and it's, you know, you have your meetings twice a month typically, but then there's maybe those extra meetings, or there's budget time. And part of it is really how much time you want to give. When I wound up being chair for the school committee and as a member of the Board of Selectmen when I was chair for 2 years, there's extra time that you have to spend. If you then want to be on subcommittees, or if you're interested, I do a lot of regional work, so I do a lot of extra meetings for that. As a member, you get to decide how much time and effort you're going to put into it. But I will say the more time and effort you put into it, the more you will get out of it, and the more that you will understand and be able to do your job better.
Assessors, we meet not that regularly, maybe once a month. Frankly, the demand is not that high. It's one of the easier ones. I'm the clerk of the committee. I take the minutes and, you know, deal with them, and it, you know, doesn't take that much time, but it is one more thing to do. And we do, like, there's certain signings. I got a call today for an occupancy permit, so I just, you know, drove down to town hall to sign that. But it's compared to your other boards, you guys put a lot more time in. Thanks.
So much like all the other boards and committees, the Finance Committee tends to meet twice a month. This time of year, we tend to meet a lot more often because we're reviewing all the different budgets for all the different departments, including the schools, trying to understand and provide feedback to each of them as to what's within the budgets that we can actually afford versus what they're asking. I would say, again, as Yolanda said, depending on how much you're willing to put into it, you can get a whole lot more out of it. Usually the extra time is spent on researching particular topics, trying to understand what else is going on. Certainly from a chair's perspective, there's more work, scheduling the meetings, making sure you're following open meeting laws and that people are not replying all to emails, dear God. You know, and from a chair's perspective also, it's being the primary interface with the different boards and committees, talking to the town manager, making things are going to be set up and presented appropriately. So there's a lot of, I'll say, project management work that we do as a chair that a regular committee member doesn't necessarily have to do.
I think you can just show up at a meeting once a month, sit there for 2 hours, and go home, if you want. And maybe some people do that. I've never had anybody call me at home complaining. We also have a really superb director, and she handles the calls. And then she'll say to us, this is what I decided, or do you want to discuss it? And then we discuss it. But in terms of time, it really is what you want to take on and how much you want to take on and how much, you know, you can do as little or as much as you want in something like this, a library, as I say, with the friends. You can just get really involved and have it very time consuming, or you can do very little, depends what you want to do.
I don't know that there's really too much more to add. I think, you know, most of the members have said everything. I really think, at least, you know, on our board, the chair really has a significant responsibility. They have to run the meetings, keep order, make sure we get through all the business that we actually need to get through, and as well as make the agenda. So that is a, you know, I think a significant learning curve. John does a great job at that. He's been doing it for a while. As far as an individual member, I think we all work together. There are either subcommittees that sometimes we put together, or we have tasks that a particular member has an interest in that they just take on by themselves, and we'll put a lot of work in and report back to the board. So I'm now the liaison to decisions at every turn, which we've had in the past, and you know, I'm meeting more people that way, and that's I look forward to doing that more in the future.
So I think the amount of time depends upon the number of projects, particularly with the planning board. More projects or more time. And I concur with prior comments. The chair definitely, chair role is definitely a more significant time commitment than just a member. Overall, I agree with what Yolanda said. I mean, the more you put in, the more you get out. So.
Pretty much the same for school committee. There's a minimum of the 2 meetings a month. There's 2 town meetings a year at least, and a couple of other things that school committee members are expected to appear at, graduation, for instance. But it also depends on what's going on. During budget season, there's a lot more. Just this week, I met with the finance committee, I met with the building committee. I'm the chair, so I meet with the superintendent. When it comes up, I'm on the negotiation team with the teachers union, and that can go on for a year. So it really depends on what the cycle is, whether there's anything major happening, and again, how, at the end of the day, how much of yourself you want to commit to these different efforts.
Okay, so our next question is, how do you collaborate with other boards, and how do you deal with different personalities, dealing with other boards or people on your own board, and what do you do when other people have different opinions? And we'll start with Ms. Tosti.
So first I'll start with my own board, and I've had a lot of different boards at this point, almost into my 9th year. And it works best when there's no drama and everybody really respects the people that they're working with, understands that people are going to come with different opinions, and that's the point after all. And that's how we get, I think, to the best decision, and not having taken it personally or having any feelings hurt if it doesn't come out the way that you had hoped. And so we put a lot of time and effort into in our board into really having a lot of mutual respect for each other, and that works. We're in a really great place right now as far as that goes. And I think we're also in a really great place in town as far as collaborating with the other boards, and that's been an evolution during my time as well. And I think it's something that we've all worked really hard at, and that we're all really proud that we are, putting the work ahead of all of the personalities and getting things done and moving this town forward and doing our best to show each other respect along the way.
Yeah, so I agree. I think there's an increased focus on collaboration between boards and cross-board communication and discussion. It is difficult because everybody's a volunteer, and you can't go to all the meetings all the time and watch WACA 24 hours a day. So it's a challenge, but I agree. I think we're headed in a good direction there. There's times when if you're on a board, you can invite people to come to your meeting to have a discussion. That's a good venue for that collaboration. And in terms of different opinions, that's the point of having different people, and that's the value in the discussion and having a 5-person panel or board. So you just have to work together to find the common ground. So.
Yeah, well said by both of you. And I think that's the way we try to function at the Board of Health. I think that's healthy for every board to, that's why there's an odd number, so that you're going to come to a resolution, at some point, unless somebody abstains and there's a tie in some way. But, that's the democratic process. We want to get people, out there, and we want to get all the opinions. And there's times that I've gone into a meeting thinking I was going to vote a certain way, potentially about a certain topic, and then you hear other people's opinions, and it may really change the way you think, because you maybe didn't think about it in that way. But as long as you're respectful to other people's opinions and realize that, we're all working together, and you don't always get your own way, and you do things for the benefit of the community, that's really why I think all these boards work, and everybody's a volunteer, and we're all trying to make the community a better place.
People come on the board because they love the library, and we have a really superb director, and so we listen very carefully to her recommendations, and we might make suggestions, but we work really well together. I'll say the most tense times we've had, I've been through maybe 8, 9 town managers. The first one, Dexter Blois, was a very big support. He got us going, he helped us, he was amazing. He told us about eminent domain if it came to that, but the fellow sold the land. And then we went on to people who didn't know we existed, thought we were the little ladies down at the library, wouldn't pay, wouldn't supply any money, chopped us left and right. And then we got Mr. Schiavi, and he all of a sudden said, gee, that library's good for the town. And now I have Michael Herbert, and I want to tell you, if anybody had to vote for Michael Herbert, I would say do that. He is special.
So I think it's important that everybody remember that we're all here for one overarching reason, which is we want to make the town a better place, right? Everybody who's on a board or committee wants to serve to make this place better. Well, when you go in with that kind of positive attitude, it's a lot easier to listen, and that's kind of one of the most important things when you're on a board or committee. You really need to listen and not just get locked into your own myopic view, potentially, of what's going to be discussed. And, I'd be more worried if everybody voted the same way all the time, and I'd be checking for pods in the basement of town hall, because that's just not how it should be. It's healthy to have dissent. It's healthy to have debate, when we all realize that we're all working towards the same big picture type of goal.
The assessors, we are a small group, and we get along well, and there just haven't been any issues. We do deal with homeowners on occasion, and that's worked out well too. I think it's a matter of misunderstandings. People don't understand what the process is of valuing their properties, and once you have that discussion, at least in my brief experience. My first term, things have worked out well.
So I agree with a lot of things that have been said. Certainly as a community, our ability to work together has drastically improved over the last 15 years since I've been involved. And I think we have to understand that we're coming at, as Adam said, we're all here for the same reason, in that we want a better town. But I think what we need to be aware of is that people get here in different ways. People have come here into whatever position it is as a board member because there's a different reason that they're sitting there, even though it's for the betterment of the town. So we have to be prepared to get to know the people that we're working with and be willing to listen. One of the stories that I tell or that I remember is I now sit next to Joe Mignani as a member of the Board of Selectmen. I can remember standing outside of Town Hall before our very first school vote, and I've never seen him so angry. And that was one of my first opinions of Joe. And we now sit next to each other, and we've gotten to know each other. We respect each other. And I think if we can all listen and just understand that, again, it's that sense of wanting to do what's best for the community, we just might be coming at it from different ways. We can learn to work with people, even if we have originally or still disagree with them.
Of course, as moderator, I had no board. So I've had no dissent. On the other hand, I did try to meet each year before town meeting with the town manager to review the warrant, to discuss any issues that might come up, to generally try to plan to run as smooth and as productive a meeting as we could. And so I found those meetings to be very helpful, and our town managers over the years to be very willing to do that and to be insightful as to what the issues were that were percolating under what is typically sort of a legalistic warrant article.
We will do one more question before we open the questions up for the public, as I'm sure some of you might be eager to ask. And that question is, how much is needed to be known about the board/committee/area of interest? Do you have to have a specific expertise or professional experience? And is training provided for these positions? We can start from Ms. Tosti.
So to me, I think what's most important is your desire to really be there. You know, if it's something that you really want to do because you're interested in it, even if you don't have prior knowledge or prior expertise, a lot of these things you can pick up along the way if you care enough to put the time in. I think this is my personal opinion, what's not a good idea is to get on to something, you know, with an agenda or because of, you know, status or whatever it is for a reason that's not because it's something that you're really interested in making a difference and making the board better, making the town better, and improving your own knowledge. But I think if you have that, then you can learn everything you need to learn once you get there.
Yes, so definitely no training. It's all on the job. But in terms of the planning board, you have the zoning and the bylaws to kind of guide you and help you frame the discussion. I think there's no specific, I don't bring any specific technical expertise to this role, but I mean, I think listening, trying to ask good questions, and not being afraid to ask a question that you think is maybe silly or stupid. Plenty of people are thinking it, and especially early on, just learn as much as you can. So.
I don't think you need to have a whole lot of prior experience in a committee or a board that you may want to run for. I think that me being a medical professional has had, you know, a little bit of an impact with certain things, but most of the things I think we deal with are common sense issues and really, you know, decency issues. And I agree with, you know, really not having an agenda. To me, there should be no agenda on the Board of Health. The whole reason why we're there is to promote the health and safety and welfare, you know, of the residents. And, you know, usually it's pretty easy to figure out the right thing to do. you know, sometimes with certain regulations, it's a little bit more difficult. You know, we can discuss a few in some of the questions because I probably don't have time. But I think if you want to learn about the committee, you know, you can learn about it, and it's not that daunting of a task.
I think you can grow into a position, and I think there's a lot of learning that goes on. And I've noticed people getting more aware of their own strengths. I never thought volunteering was a good idea. I thought people ought to pay me for what I did. And then I started volunteering, and I just think there's so much. I can give you an example. When I said to you, one of the trustees that I invited to come onto the board, she had a job in commercial real estate in Boston, and she was, as it turned out, she was getting a lot of ageism, and she was getting a lot of sexism because it was a male industry, and she didn't get a lot of respect. And then she came onto the board, and she was strong. I didn't even know her very well until she came onto the board. And then she started doing things, saying things, the vocabulary when it came to doing certain things. We were so impressed with her, and then she started to get more impressed with herself because she'd kind of been beaten down over the years. And then coming on as a volunteer, she got a lot of admiration, a lot of respect, a lot of strength.
So on our 7-member committee, on the Finance Committee, we have 3 people that have actual financial background. We have lawyers, engineers, builders, you name it. Basically, if you can do basic math with a calculator on your phone, you're pretty good. And if you're willing to ask questions and be curious and try and find out, you know, what the motivations are behind particular budget lines, that's really all you need.
Okay, for the assessors, I do have a computer background kind of relevant to it, and the other assessor now, Steve Greenberg, is a realtor in town and knows the town, but that's not necessary at all. I think the key thing is that, as someone said, I forgot, Lori, maybe, you have to be interested in it. And as I said before, oddly enough, I really find that the assessing process to be very interesting, and I think anybody who shares that interest could do the job well.
I would have to agree with what has been said, that as long as you're willing to get on the board and learn, I think it's a good you want to have at least a basic understanding of what job or what the responsibilities are for the board that you're running for. But at some point, you're not going to be able to know everything, and partly because, one, sometimes you get told about stuff, but you don't get all the information until you're actually sitting on the board. So it's okay to not know everything, but just be willing to ask the questions. I know for Board of Selectmen, we have the access to our association, the Mass Municipal Association, and in October, they typically have an open training session for one day where new members can go to that. And then we also have an annual conference where you can go to, and I always love going to those because you really learn and you get to talk to other members of Board of Selectmen, and you know, you can always ask questions. I also found I became the representative to our regional collaborative, and I learned a lot by doing that and just speaking to other people, not only selectmen in Ashland, but in other towns.
So I always felt that for me, kind of having a lawyerly way of thinking was helpful to keeping things straight, but it is absolutely not a requirement. Adam, of course, is not a lawyer. He's in finance. Doris Overturf was not a lawyer. Both were fine moderators. We learn the same way. We read and reread Town Meeting Time, which is the moderator's Bible. We joined the State Association, which is basically an educational group of moderators that get together and teach each other the issues that they face in various towns. And we eventually learn the job.
Alrighty, thank you to the wonderful responses from our honorable panelists. And right now we'll be opening, right now we'll be opening questions up for the public to ask. There's a microphone there for those who are curious about something from our panelists. So you're welcome to go up and ask a question.
Oh, come on.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for answering all the questions. I didn't know most of what you were describing. It was enlightening. When I came here to listen, and when I think about elective position, you know, like you say, volunteering is not a good idea. It's kind of out of your control situation, but I guess how I got to know our town leadership is from a lot of complaints from either people or in newspapers. And I think on the surface, what you see primarily is negativity. So this may be a turnoff or a scary aspect of it. Do you, maybe this is what I see. Are there, you know, people who are, do you see people being grateful, or is negativity gets overwhelming? How do you deal with that?
Anyone who wants to respond can grab their mic and do so.
When I came on the board, nobody knew the library existed, as I said. And then we went through a series of challenges because we went through directors until we ultimately got our superb director. But we did hit the front page. At the time, there really was Framingham News, Metro West, something. There was a newspaper, and we were on the front page. And it was a little scary because you weren't too sure who in the market would spot you and wouldn't like you because of what you had done. But what had happened was people said, well, that's so-and-so's library. And I said, no, it's the town's library. And I think that kind of turned things around. And I also felt that suddenly people knew we existed. We weren't just a place to drive by. But it was a little harrowing. But I had said tonight, in fact, I said, I think every board in town has had its moment. The fire department certainly had it. I think the fire chief stole the truck at one time. And the fire department, you know, the police department certainly had its moment, the Board of Health, everybody's had it. But I think you get through that, and then all of a sudden you've got a really good board because people step forward and want to make it work and make it be better. And yeah, we hit the press. And then the press doesn't say, look how well they're doing, except we do have this edifice, we have this room.
I think that if you put yourself out for public office, you have to know that you're not going to make everybody happy. And when you are sitting and when you make a decision, you do it with the best information, with as much input from people as possible, but you still have to make or take a decision that you think is right. And it's sometimes very hard, and there are people who are not going to be happy with you, and that's okay. Because just like in everything in life, you can't make everybody happy, and you have to make decisions that you think are the best based on the information you have. And that's okay. And the other thing is I've learned you cannot take it personally. People might say something to you, but they don't really mean you personally. They mean you as the member of the Board of Selectmen or school committee or whatever role you're playing. They don't think that you're necessarily bad, but maybe the decision that you made was bad, and that has helped me.
What I've done with that, I would say, honestly, probably like 98% of the people that do write to us on school committee have a problem with something, you know, or someone or some issue. And in order to not be frustrated by that, the way that I think about it is, first of all, that's partly what we're here for, right? We're their representatives, and they are allowed to express their concerns. And it's me also understanding I'm not frustrated with the expression of the concern. It's just that if that's all you're hearing all the time, sometimes you start to feel like, okay, you know, is anything positive happening here? So it does make you know, once in a while when you get that positive feedback, it's much, much sweeter. But also just remembering that you know, we're here to take that input, and there are times when that input is right, you know, and it might change the way that we think about something or how we proceed, and we have made some decisions moving forward based on the input that we get. So I would encourage people to continue, but it's also, I'm just going to say one more thing about this because I think this is important, at least for me. I want to share this. It's helped me to be better about not only reaching out to people when I'm unhappy with them. You know, and I've made an effort. I remember one day I sat down and I sent all my kids' teachers a letter, the ones that I thought were doing an amazing job, that I loved, and I told them why. Because I think it's just we're all so busy and you don't really think sometimes to do that unless you're bothered by something. So I think it's helped me to take a minute to, you know, instead of thinking about who's doing a bad job, you know, who's doing a good job and how can I let them know that today.
I think something else to keep in mind is that while it's easy to have that visceral punchback reaction when you get negativity, if you take it from the other perspective, which is this is somebody that actually cares enough to contact you and express their opinion, if you can get past the I hate you or whatever it is that comes with it. You know, we used to teach a software class that's called Your Software Sucks and So Do You. So, you know, it's trying to separate yourself a little bit from the message that comes across from the negativity piece and say, well, what's really behind this? What's driving this behind this person? How can I engage with this person and actually turn this into a positive? You know, you can actually have a really profound effect on somebody and turn that really negative situation into one where you've gained an ally, okay? Somebody that is now understands you're there, you listen, you actually paid attention and just didn't hit delete or route them to spam, and that you care, right? And that's really what this is about. We care. So, you know, I would encourage every person out there, if you've got a problem, you need to contact somebody on the board because we do care. That's why we're here, and we want to help you.
That last statement, I think, you know, is huge for every single board in town. We are, you know, we want the community to know that, as far as at least the Board of Health goes, that we're there for any potential issues that you may have, whether or not you think you have a mosquito problem, whether or not your neighbor's making noise, whether or not you think, you know, the builder that's building next to you is, you know, starting at 6 o'clock in the morning when they're not allowed to start until 7. We want to be visible, and we want people to know that we're here, not just the people in the community, but the other people that we serve, you know, such as, you know, restaurant people, to, you know, make sure that they're in compliance with things. We want to be an ally and head off problems before they start and be more proactive rather than reactive. And, you know, if people voice concerns, you know, however you do it, you can get a hold of the chair, you can email us, you can get a hold of the health department in town. We really want to make sure that everybody has every need that they need to have taken care of, because there's nothing more important than your health.
Hello. I know you mentioned no multi-part questions, and this is sort of a multi-part question, so go ahead and push back on me. But we're talking about communication and people contacting you. So my question is, I guess, what's the best way to communicate with your particular area of government and board? For example, I went on the website to communicate with the Board of Health. There's no email addresses listed for members of the Board of Health that I could find. School committee, I don't know if going to the actual meeting is the better option. I know that with the Board of Selectmen, email seems to be one of the best ways. Facebook seems to be the way that a lot of people try to get your attention. But I notice you guys aren't biting as much lately. So I wanted to just ask what the best way to communicate our concerns as well as positive feedback is, and then also find out how much of your time does that take up. Thank you.
I'll start as Board of Selectmen. Yeah, so we have a rule where when you send something to the Board of Selectmen, all 4 or 5 selectmen get it. But because of open meeting laws, we all can't respond. So typically we ask the chair to respond via email, and they may have done it with input from the town manager. Yeah, it's been interesting, the whole Facebook thing. And what happened was I was hearing some information at one of our regional meetings, and what we realized is because Steve Mitchell, myself, Joe Mignani, and sometimes Rob are all on some of these Facebook pages, if one of us responds, it could actually be an open meeting law violation because they're then sharing their opinion. So we've had a little conversation about that, and we are trying to not. So I would say if you want to reach the Board of Selectmen, the best way is either via email, or I believe we're all in the phone book. I know I am. I know Joe and Steve and Rob. You know, pick up the phone, call one of us, call all of us if you think it's important enough, and we will all talk to you, or see us at the farmer's market or at the store. You know, I always find it funny that I can walk through the supermarket, and depending on what I'm wearing and what my hair looks like, people don't even recognize me. So.
So I always felt that it was part of my job to help people formulate the motions and that they wanted to present. So I always encourage people to call me at home, and many people did, and said, this is what I want to do, how do I do it? And so I wrote many motions for various people, presenting whatever issue they wanted to present, so that it would be presented at town meeting in an appropriate way. And I felt that was part of my job, and it had nothing to do with my feelings about what they wanted to do. Whatever they wanted to do, I tried to put it into the best form that I could, so that they could present it, and they could present it in a straightforward and understandable way. And I felt that was my obligation as moderator.
So I don't know if people know, but just about every board and committee has a generic email address associated with them that automatically forwards to every member of that board or committee. So the easiest way from an electronic perspective is to send an email to that address. I know for the Finance Committee, similar to the Board of Selectmen, the chair is typically the one that will respond to that email, just so that we don't have an open meeting law issue. I would also say that if you can't find us in the phone book, call Mr. Herbert. I'm sure he can connect you to whoever the board or committee member or the chair is that you want to reach. Just about all of us are out there in some form or another, electronic, voice, whatever you want. And you know, we're happy to talk to anybody who wants to.
I will add that for school committee, though, it doesn't come, the email does not come to everybody. The address is school committee chair, and it does just come to the school committee chair. I will forward it to everybody, but that's one way that we avoid having everybody replying on the same, it helps us avoid open meeting law situations, but I certainly make everybody aware of your concern. Coming to a meeting is always welcome. We have public comment opportunity at the beginning of every meeting, which you can attend if you want. I try not to engage on Facebook for the same reasons. I see what's out there. I don't necessarily think that's the best way for us to be, you know, doing this job. So I do it, I refrain for that reason, so to encourage people to just do it through the proper channels, and also to avoid any discussions, inadvertent discussions with my colleagues, and also because I think that if the tone gets lost, or even to my own self, you know, I might see a comment that provokes me, and I don't want to, you know, start getting into it with people on Facebook. So for me, that's not the best way to communicate with school committee.
As far as the Board of Health, I'd be surprised if our email address isn't on at least our homepage, but if we're not, I believe like every committee that we are, there's a health department here. The health agent is Mark Oram. You can always call Mark 24/7. John Featherston's usually pretty easily gotten a hold of as well. He's the chair of the committee right now. Obviously, every other suggestion, if you see any of us, but you know, you should be able to call the town hall and get a hold of Mark, and he should answer, you know, really pretty quickly.
Consistent with the other boards, the planning board has a centralized planning board address that goes to all members of the planning board by email. We also typically defer to the chair to respond to emails. I definitely love to hear feedback from people. One other route would be the town planner or the assistant town planner who's in town hall, 5 days a week, business hours, that would also be an excellent way to get a hold of us.
Just to cover it, calling the assessor's office in town hall, I think would be the best way if you have a issue with your property value.
Are there any other further questions from the audience?
I don't have a question, I have a comment. I've been involved actively and less actively in town politics over 50 years. And when I was first involved, there was a lot of factionalism. There was a lot of winning at any cost. There were fiefdoms divided up in the town. I must say, over the years, that has remarkably improved. The last major thing that happened that I can remember is, and I'll go back to an early thing at one town meeting back in the 50s, the school committee made a recommendation on a new curtain for the auditorium. There was dispute in the town that people didn't want to do it. The school committee got up and said, we have the right to do anything we want. If you don't like it, vote us out. And that's what happened. But that kind of thing went on for a long time. In the last, maybe 15 years, that's totally disappeared. The school committee is now part of the town. It was a separate board. It was set up separately. Legally, they were separate. And there's been a lot of cooperation, and I want to say that based on the discussions we heard, that I've heard tonight, you people work together for the town. You don't agree, that's not required, but you work for the best interests of the town, not of a clique, not of yourself. It's basically for the town, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions and comments. Unfortunately, we have run out of time for this evening. However, we will move on to closing statements from each of our panelists. 1 minute for each panelist, and we'll start with Thomas Waldstein.
Well, thank you for having me. Coming back after this panel reminds me why I enjoyed all those years as moderator so much. Thank you for our small but distinguished group of citizens who have come here tonight. It occurs to me that the panelists could easily sit in the audience, and the audience could easily replace us up at the panel. So it's been a great pleasure to see everybody and to talk about my position.
I too want to say thank you for coming out, and I know we're also being watched via live stream for those who couldn't be here for whatever reason. I would just say, if you've learned something, share it with your friends and neighbors. If you're not quite ready to run, but you have someone who you think could do a good job, there's still time to pull papers for all the positions. And it's okay to be contested, and it's okay to run and not win. You learn, the community grows. So again, if you have someone who you think would be good in a position, encourage them to run. If you think you want to run, reach out. I'm willing to talk to people and give you information, because I think the more people we have involved, the better we will be as a community.
Thank you. We love Ashland and Friends of the Ashland Public Library and all you people for being here. And I've enjoyed this. Thank you. And I think one important thing is, if you're interested, attend some meetings. And I don't think we had a visitor yet at the assessors, so come on, come on down. But all right. Okay, thank you. They're during the day, though. And I did have one more thing. I always do. But anyway, attend meetings and do my other role. There is the Democratic Town Committee and there's the Republican Town Committee. And if you are of either of those parties, I encourage you to work with the groups. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you to everyone for coming out and for being here, having the discussion with us. I hope it was useful to you to learn a little bit more about what we do and why we do it. Our next Finance Committee meeting, I know everybody's coming, is March 26th at Keefe Tech. We're going to be reviewing the Keefe Tech budget for this coming year. And I will throw a shout out that says, hey, Rachel, it's almost bedtime. I hope you brush your teeth.
Well, I hope you had as much fun as I did. I'd like to remind you that the library is part of the Minuteman system, and that means we are part of 42 libraries that you can access. And because Middlesex Bank just gave us $15,000, we now have a host of new museum passes that you might want to check out. And there's a new service called Canopy where you can, with your library card, access something like 60,000 films and documentaries for a month on your card. We have all kinds of nice things. Come on in.
I hope that maybe a few people came out, or people that are watching on TV are a little bit more interested and want to get involved, because it's just like most of the rest of the things in life. There's a few people that may do a lot of things and run the town, but if you have an opportunity and you really want to give back and you want to pay it forward a little bit and appreciate the community that you're in, everybody always, the few same people can't be doing the same thing all the time, and it's good to get new people in there. From a personal perspective, I've made a lot of good friends, already that I think I'll have when I'm not on the board anymore. And I think we've made a difference. I'm proud of some of the new legislation that we passed as far as tobacco flavors go. That's what I spend my life doing. I do it every single day, and I enjoy doing that. And this is kind of an extension of that for me. And it's extremely rewarding to be a part of the group I'm a part of, and really associated with all these great people up here. I'm amazed that this town has just people that really care and want to help. Everybody here is a volunteer, so nobody's doing this because they're getting paid. Everybody's doing it because they really want to do it.
I should say thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight, and thank you for everybody who's tuned in, either in person or at home. I would say, overall, you definitely take more from this experience than you put in. I do believe that, and I think it helps you in a lot of aspects of your life. And I just would close by saying thank you to the two moderators for organizing this and all the thoughtful questions and structure. It's a great conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, I would encourage anybody who's even, remotely considering getting involved to just explore that a little further. I'm sure anybody up here would be willing to talk to you if you emailed us or got in touch with us, answer any further questions. It's been an honor for me to be involved. My kids are all in college or beyond. I don't have kids in the schools anymore, and I'm still here by choice. Because I've met some amazing people, and I like to work collaboratively with people who are trying to make our town a better place, as we've heard so many times before. And my favorite thing about it, honestly, is the students that we have in this town are unbelievable. You ladies are no exception. You did an amazing job. We have kids coming to, all the time, yeah. Great job. It's great to see you also involved. We just had a play. I don't know if anyone caught the play at the high school this weekend. Amazing talent there. Kids coming, reading poems, and doing great things, great community service things out there all over the place. And we have a lot of talent and amazing people in this town, and we're all really lucky to be serving you, and encourage anybody else to step up because there's room for everybody.
Well, thank you again to our wonderful panelists. Your responses have been extremely insightful, and it really shows the passion that anyone can have for their town and their community. I think it's safe to say we all learned something new today, and that's great because education never stops. Another special thank yous to the library, the Friends of the Library, and the We Love Ashland group, as well as WACA-TV. And thank you for those watching at home with the live stream, as well as all that came to attend today.
Another special thank you for our Honorable Representative Lewis, Democratic Committee Co-Chair Ms. Keegan, and Republican Committee Chair Mr. Featherston. It's nice of you to come join us, and thank you again. Thank you to Betsy and the rest of the committee who invited us to moderate. It was a great experience, and we hope that you'd invite us again. It was a great time, and we hope the rest of you have a great night.
Thank you.